Hey, Judge, how are you?
Good afternoon, sir. How are you?
Good.
Good. Well, I thought I'd bring you in a couple of minutes early just to let you know it looks like everybody's gathering here. I've got 15 in the waiting room right now.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, we have 17. No. Yeah, we do have 17.
17? That'll be good.
So, no, things are good. We're getting through this COVID stuff. I had to restrict the MS2 class. I shifted all their classes to virtual this week. They had a little, they had a little bit of an outbreak, but we're bringing everyone back starting next week.
Are you? Are the cadets, they're scattered all over right now? Are they in a classroom or?
No, they're scattered all over for this class.
Okay.
We have lab immediately after this.
Yeah. Well, I know you're struggling. I keep track of it. You know, the legal side is struggling. Everybody's, you know, the people are starting to hate the term, but the new normal or the paradigm shift or whatever it is we're dealing with, it's kind of incredible.
Yeah, I saw a note today. I think we're going to go back to 75% hopefully for restaurants.
Okay, I knew that the governor was going to be holding a press conference. I didn't know what the result of that was. So I've been in court hearings all morning, and then again I start them up at actually just a few minutes after we break at 13:30. I'll go back in, and I'm doing a lot of court on YouTube or video and Zoom. So
the young lady we were able to she received that you helped. She received her citizenship, and we contracted her in August.
Well, I don't know how much help I was. I mean, I contacted two representatives and I asked them to get involved, and you know, all I could be told at that point was, well, we can't really tell you what we're doing, but thank you for the information. We'll look into it. So, you know, I'm glad to help, but I really don't know if I did that much or not.
I'm sure it did, Judge. So I'll introduce you initially, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to have everybody just come up on the net, state their name and what their branch and component they're desiring, just so you have an understanding of the cadets.
Good. I look forward to it. Yeah, I've got a little introductory slide and just kind of show them who I am, but yeah, getting an introduction will certainly help. Well, all right, looks like we're close enough. I'll just go ahead and bring everybody in if you're ready.
Okay, let's do this, Judge.
All right, looks like we have 16, sir.
Will you turn my volume up all the way?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started, team. Fortunate to have Judge McCaig, Buddy, as he is known to some, talk to us today about ethics. Buddy graduated, Judge McCaig graduated in 1972 from Sam Houston State, and he's an ROTC alumni. He's also a distinguished alumni for the university. He was an armor officer, did 10 years on active duty, another 14 years in the reserves and the guard, and he retired in 1995. One of the other, we're all tracking the Cold War. That was the big thing in the 80s. You know, before all the current stuff going on in Iraq and Afghanistan, and Judge McCaig commanded a armor company back then. What we're going to do now is I'm going to call on each of you and just state your name, which component you're hoping to get selected for, and branch, just so he has an understanding of who we have in the room. Okay, go ahead and come up, Bill Woodburn. You're first.
Yes, sir. My name's Bill Woodburn, and hopefully I get medical services or infantry. Those are the two branches I want. I know they're polar opposites, but I'd be happy with either one. Thank you.
Okay, Alex.
Oh, yes, sir. My name's Alex Rocha. I'm hoping for active duty, and my branch of choice is aviation.
Okay, thanks. Oscar Gonzalez.
Yes, sir. My name's Cadet Gonzalez Oscar. My branch choice is MP,
Okay.
active duty.
All right. Quentin Chamberlain.
Hello, sir. My name is Quentin Chamberlain. I want the active duty component, and I would like quartermaster.
Okay, Dakota.
Hello, my name is Dakota Burden. I am hoping for the reserve component, and I'm hopefully going to get ordnance for my branch.
Okay, David.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is David Tierney. I hope to go aviation and active duty.
Okay. Eric Webster. Okay, I think Eric's driving. Hannah.
Hello, my name is Hannah Zapata, sir, and I want to go active duty, and my preferred branch is AG.
Okay, Jared Massey.
Good morning, sir. I'm Jared Massey. I'm trying to go for active duty and MI, and then inevitably JAG.
Okay, Kyle.
Hello, sir. My name is Kyle Cisna, and branch of choice is aviation and active duty.
Lindsay.
Hello, sir. I'm Lindsay Steele. I would like to go active, and I'm going for medical services.
Mike Way.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Michael Way. I hope to receive the active duty component and branch cyber.
Okay. Nancy Tran.
Hello, sir. My name is Nancy Tran, and I'm going for reserve MP.
Okay. Nikki.
Hi, sir. I'm Nikki Stone, and I'm going for active duty component and branch aviation.
Oscar Terradas.
Good morning, sir. I'm Oscar Eda Terradas, and I'm hoping for active duty infantry or possibly engineer.
Steven Cardenas.
I'm Steven Cardenas. I'm hoping for active duty MI or infantry.
Tristan.
Tristan Kujay. I'm GRFD, gonna say National Guard, and I'm gonna get MI.
Very confident. Eric Webster, are you on, Eric?
Well, I had seen Webster earlier, but I don't see them now.
Yeah. Okay, I'll turn it over.
Webster says his connection is unstable.
Okay. Okay, the floor is yours, Judge.
All right, I appreciate it. It's all good hearing from all of you. I know several of you from my time hanging around in various places on the university campus. We're going to just cover a couple of things here, and then we'll get ourselves started. I just want to confirm, Colonel, did the slides come up? Roger. Well, all right. I think before we start, you probably ought to figure out who I am. And this is me. And whenever the Colonel was telling you that I commanded a tank company in Germany, that's on the tank qualification course. We were fixing to take that tank down range, and that was my crew. Yes, it was an old tank, but it was a great tank at the time. That was Charlie 66. That was my crew, and we actually set the record on that tank course and became the #1 tank firing company in Europe for 1984. So that was a pretty cool deal, what we did that. So whenever we start looking at me, he covered most of that, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time with that. But I'm going to dip one time back into the really, really old files. This is the Counter-Guerrilla Company, 1971-72. And I'm the big guy over on the right-hand side. That was the company. We were the predecessors of those who are now in the Shooters Rangers. Out of this particular group, there's this little short guy right here that I'm marking out. He ended up as a brigadier general. He spent 32 years on active duty, and 28 of those years was in special forces. This guy was special forces. This guy was special forces. Another handful in there were Ranger, and about half of us spent quite a bit of, excuse me, quite a bit of our time on either a full active duty career or reserve components career. So that was the mob. I'll tell you candidly that most of the guys in that outfit would probably have been disciplined by the university, failed to graduate, or either that have been convicted felons by now. So that was us back in the day. We're going to talk about something that is really near and dear to my heart, and that is Army ethics. Ethics in general. Whenever we start talking about ethics, I really want to say it's more accurately life ethics. And I say life ethics because our Army careers, whether we're going reserve components, National Guard component, or active component, it becomes our life. It becomes who we are, and how we respond to that life has to be in an ethical way. And ethics becomes part of what we do and how we do in so many ways. And so ethics is not really something that you put on or take off like a shirt or your uniform, because ethics, and some people call it morality, but ethics is something that is ingrained into your character. It becomes part of you. It becomes who you are. You don't even really have to start thinking about ethics because it is so much of what you are and how you are in all things. And frankly, this is kind of an opinion, I'll tell you that, but you either live an ethical life or you don't. Whenever you put on your uniform, and whether you're a reserve component or active duty and you go in on post or you go in for your drills or whatever it is, you can't suddenly become an ethical person. You're ethical whenever you wake up, you're ethical when you go to bed, and you're ethical in all of that period of time in between. You just live an ethical life. And like I say, some people talk about it as a morality, and it is morality to an extent. But that's really how I look at what we do you live it. So what we're talking today about the Army ethic, and so it's this professional ethics that is adopted by the Army. I know you've all looked at it. There's a massive amount of reading to get involved in today's program right here. So I think you've seen quite a bit of what we're doing, but we deal with the Army values. We deal with the law, that we deal with the Army law. We also deal with the civil law, and those are part and components of all this. We talk about our creed and our oath, and we're going to talk a little bit more about our oath later. You see the word ethos right there, ethos, however you want to pronounce that. This is kind of the culture of where we are and what we're doing, how we're doing, and all that's part of us. And as soldiers, regardless of whether you're Army active or Army Reserve or National Guard, but as soldiers, we're all part of this Army culture. We're all part of the shared belief system that we have as soldiers. And I'll tell you, it's been a long time since I wore the uniform, but being a soldier is still part of who I am. Every day, there's something that I do, even as a state district judge, that reminds me of my Army career and my Army ethic and the Army culture and what goes on as part of me. And I can assure you that in 20 or 30 years from now, which seems like more than a lifetime to you, you're going to be looking back in this and you're going to find that the Army culture is part of who you are as well. And even if all you do is spend these years in the Reserve ROTC program and then later go into either just a limited career or reserve career, you're always going to have this Army culture as part of you. It becomes part of your DNA. It's literally inculcated into what you do and how you act and what you're doing. We look at these loyalties and duties and things like that. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to pick on a few of you and ask you if you'll just kind of give me your idea of what we're talking about here. Burden, if you would, tell me what loyalty means to you. Make sure that I mute you there.
Yes, sir. Loyalty to me means that no matter what comes across your path, no matter who influences you, you still stay loyal to either your company, your nation, no matter what comes across your path.
You know, there's an old saying, I'll give the loyalty to my country, right or wrong, but always my country. There's some loyalty that we deal with along those lines. Chide, tell me about duty. What does that mean to you as a potential infantry officer?
For duty, I just consider it like putting your best foot forward in everything you do, because whatever you do, it's going to have your stamp on it, it's going to have your name on it, and like owning up to what you present and how you perform.
Good, good, good. Well, Seal, tell us about respect.
Respect would be just listening to your higher authorities, not complaining about it, just doing the work and just doing what you're told, so other people can show that, hey, we need to respect our authorities, and as well as just other people in general, because treat people the way you want to be treated.
Good point. Might have broken up a little bit. I was actually trying to get Lindsay Steele on this one, but let's do the selfless service there, Steele.
So for selfless service, it's putting your subordinates and your mission ahead of yourself, and putting like the welfare of the nation and everything in front of you, like over your personal.
That's good, and I want to take that a little bit further on that particular one of the Army values here. Whenever we talk about selfless service, it goes beyond even our military. Yes, we always put the welfare of the troops ahead of our own. You'll find, if you haven't already, whenever you go out to the field of various maneuvers or whatever you might be doing, you make sure that the troops get fed first. Your first sergeant is probably not going to let you go last, but the leadership is always standing back, watching the troops, watching and taking care of them. But that carries over to your civilian life as well. You can find things out in the community. And I know this senior class, the MS4s, has done a great job over the last 3 or 4 years being involved in the community. And with what we're dealing with right now with the COVID, I know that creates kind of an area that is not being fulfilled as well as you'd like it to be. But selfless service becomes one of those things that you just live. You just look at others, you let them be first. And it could be something as simple as whenever you start to go through a door, you open the door for somebody and you're just polite. It's just a matter of being courteous. All right, Cisna, tell us about honor.
So when I think about honor, I think about like living up all the Army values. I think of the military's highest award given, the Medal of Honor, receiving something like that. And just living every day, loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, integrity, all those come into play with honor, sir.
You know, whenever the nation was being founded, those 56 men who signed the Declaration of Independence pledged their lives, their honor, and their fortunes, their lives, and their sacred honor is, I believe, the way it's done. And so whenever you start thinking about our sacred honor, our honor, that becomes really our signature on everything that we do, whether it be as an officer, a cadet, a civilian later on. Your honor is something that goes with you. And you can lose your honor through violations of ethical principles. It's kind of tied into the next one there with integrity. So let me find Mr. Way. Tell us about integrity.
Integrity is essentially doing the right thing when nobody's looking. So encompassed within integrity would be just having the right character and the right morals to be able to do something whenever nobody's looking, which is to just always do the right thing no matter what.
Yep, integrity. And I really like the way you said that, even when nobody's watching. You're out in a four-way stop sign in the middle of the desert. Do you stop at the stop sign? Well, you certainly ought to, because that's part of integrity. You just obey it because it is. Stone, tell us about courage.
When I think of personal courage, I just think you have that courage to lead your soldiers, and you have it within yourself to want to be the best leader for them, so that they'll have courage to go out there and fight for our country. And so they can look to you and then have that same type of courage.
Excellent. I'm going to cover something right here. There's two kinds of courage. Now, part of this is the doctrine of McCaig, okay? I'll let you know that that is an opinion. You have physical courage and you have moral courage. The question becomes, though, which is harder to obtain? And so let's talk a little about this courage concept. Physical courage. You're a firefighter, you arrive on the scene, your child is crying on the second floor, you just immediately jump up, you jump off the truck, run up the stairs, and you go into the blazing fire. A police officer arrives on a scene of an active shooter, and the police officer runs forward. The lieutenant running a convoy in Afghanistan, whether you're quartermaster, ordnance corps, infantry, whatever you might be, there's no such thing as the rear area anymore. I think all of you know that. In Afghanistan, you're running a convoy, you get an ambush. Well, what do? You do your immediate action ambush drills. You don't just flop down in the ditch and hide and try to crawl inside your helmet. That's the physical courage. But the thing about physical courage, it's one of those things that is almost a split-second decision. Yes, you do pre-think the concept of physical courage. You know that there's certain things expected of you. You work yourself into the understanding of that I'm going to have to do things first. The troops are going to have to watch me. You know, back whenever I was training, one of the things that I kind of grew up as a wimp, I guess you'd say, and I didn't really grow up until I got into ROTC and the counter guerrilla company. But I wanted to jump off the tower first. I wanted to do the fast rope off the tower first. I wanted to rappel first. I wanted to be the first one out of the helicopter because you precondition yourself to do those things. But I'll tell you, having said all of that, moral courage is so much harder to do because you really, in the physical courage thing, you really don't have a lot of time to think about it. You know, if I do A, B is going to happen to me. You really don't have a lot of time to think about that. But whenever you're dealing with moral courage, you have time to think about that. You have time to think about the consequences of doing the right thing. You have time to think about what people are going to say to you or about you if you take a position that is contrary to the group that you're in. So because of all of that, I kind of cobbled together several sayings, but this is the saying that I came up with. And I try to live my life that when you know what is the right thing to do, when you know in your heart what you're supposed to do, and then you fail to do that thing that is right, to me, that is the greatest form of cowardice because you internalized the decision to not do the right thing. And so whenever you start working on your Army career, and even right now, whenever you go out and you go to drill or you're hanging out with friends, the good thing about the MS4 group is I know that you're a tight-knit group. I've heard good things about you. I've seen good things about you as you've come up as MS1s, 2s, and 3s. And so I know you've got a good reputation as a tight group, so you probably don't hang out with the dirt balls of life. But there's times out there whenever the group that you might be in doesn't want to do the right thing. And you then have to take the moral high ground and decide what you're going to do and whether what you're going to do is the right thing. And so that becomes part of this Army leader ethic that we're talking about. Because one of the greatest temptations that you're going to have as a young lieutenant, as a second lieutenant, whether you're, and I've been in the Guard and the Reserve, and it's probably more of a temptation in the Guard than it is on active duty. But you're going to have a tendency and a temptation to be one of the guys because you're going to be close to their age. There may be a few that might even be a little older than you. A lot of them are going to be 2 or 3 years younger than you, but you're going to have this great temptation to be one of the guys. But you can't be one of the guys because you have to do the right thing. And you have to always be ready to do that right thing. And whenever you fail to do that right thing, then you have labeled yourself in this category, and it's a terrible category to be in. Now, don't get the impression that I'm telling you that I'm perfect in all of this area, because I'm not. There have been failings. Fortunately, those failings have been minor failings, and usually they've been failings of the heart as opposed to the mind and character. But whenever you set out to do the right thing, you might make mistakes, and that's okay. You know, don't cut your throat because you've made a simple error. Just strive to do right the next time. Do the next right thing. Do the next best right thing that you can do. And that's what this part of this thing is all about. And that kind of leads me into another one of my staff here in the court calls my buddyisms. I'm always coming up with buddyisms, and I plagiarize a lot of them. I got a history. I read a lot. I probably read 30 or 40 books a year. But one of the things that you have to understand, and this is about ethics and morality, is you have to do things right. But first, you have to do the right things. And you think, okay, what does that mean? Well, here's this. Doing things right is management. That's your technical and tactical skills that you're doing, and you're managing your troops. But leadership, doing the right things is leadership. We all strive to be good leaders. Yes, you have to be a manager. There's no question about being a manager. You're going to manage your resources, you're managing your time, you're managing your personnel. There's all things that you're managing, and you're doing those things right. But far and above, the most important thing is to do the right things. Because if you're not doing the right things, you're not a leader. You're just a manager. So when you're doing the right things, then you are a leader. And doing the right things is very much part of this ethical component that we're talking about right here. So let's kind of talk about what you're looking forward to do. You know, it was really great. I'm glad Colonel Contreras gave me the opportunity to hear about all of the things that y'all are doing. Let me see if I think I may have somebody trying to come in. Yeah, Webster's coming back in on us. I know that it was great hearing about all the things that you're hoping to do, whether you're going into Reserve Components, Guard, or active duty. But to see all of you wanting to be good leaders, good soldiers, and I can kind of get the enthusiasm as you were telling me what you wanted to do. And we start looking at these moral obligations that we have as officers, and you're going into a really great thing. I'm kind of jealous of all of what y'all are getting to do. But one of the things that I've learned, even after my military career ended, is that military officers represent the military profession. I go to a great Veterans Day program at the high school that I graduated from a long, long time ago, long about the time your grandparents were graduating. But whenever we get to see the young students in high school, they're about 3 or 4 years, 5 years younger than you are, but they have a great deal of respect for the military profession, and they see these veterans out there, and they're looking at us as an example, how we act, what we do, what we're wearing. And so we represent the military profession, even after we've taken the uniform off. I can tell you, Colonel Contreras can tell you right now, he may go to HEB or Walmart in flip-flops and cargo shorts, but if he's got an Army strong t-shirt on, people are going to look at him. They're going to nod to him. They're going to say, thank you, or are you serving now, or have you served? But people look at the military profession, and they want to have something to respect, because when we look at the culture that's going on in our country right now, there's a lot of things that are being torn down. There's a lot of things that are being questioned. There's a lot of cultural upheaval. But whenever you start looking at we'll call it the pillars of our society, pillars of our culture, the military is one of those pillars that currently has great standing. You know, that wasn't the case in 1972 whenever I was commissioned. We were almost post-Vietnam. A lot of us went to Vietnam. I did not. I volunteered for Vietnam. They thought I was insane, so they sent me to Fort Hood. But during those days, the military profession was not held in high esteem, but right now it is. And so whenever you're acting out in the civilian community, or whether you're working in your military profession, the officers represent that profession. People look at your behavior. What you do affects others, not just the troops that you control, but all of the troops that are out there, all of the people out there are going to be looking at you. And then as you grow into what you're doing, whether you're getting out as a first lieutenant or maybe a captain, and you decide that you want to go into the civilian world, that's one thing, but you're going to have positions of authority. And power and authority bring responsibility. And what I'm doing right now is a state district judge. If you don't know what a state district judge does, it's the highest level trial court in the state of Texas. And what that means is I handle the capital murders, the aggravated robberies, the rapes, the drug cartels, the multi-million-dollar lawsuits. And so there's a lot of power and authority that you're dealing with. You're going to be dealing with power and authority. And so whenever you're doing that, and if you have a lapse of ethical conduct, people are going to see that. It's going to be magnified, and it's going to bring discredit to our military, in particular to the Army in particular. So we do serve as role models, and you'll continue to serve as role models. Colonel Contreras had mentioned that I've been honored to be a distinguished alumni of Sam Houston State University. Of looking at all of the distinguished alumni over the years, if you see what areas of the university they came from, there's two that are represented probably more than any other college in the university, and those are the military officers who've gone through the ROTC program, and that's whether they were in English, journalism, math, wherever they were, but they went through the ROTC program, and the other one is criminal justice. And so there just seems to be a category of people that are involved with service to the community, service to the nation, and service to something and ideals that are larger than themselves. So we do serve as role models, even in those times once you've stopped wearing the uniform. And I'm going to just cover a couple of other things before we open this up, and then we're going to just kind of chat a little bit. But we maintain these ethics for a purpose. They're not just something that somebody dreamed up, but these are foundations and concepts that shape who we are. You know, I said that you don't take off your ethics like you take off your uniform. That's part of your life. Well, that's exactly what that means right there. And our failures, whenever we fail to adopt and adhere to these standards, then those lapses in our ethics occur. If you did your reading, you read about the Betrayus, or the Bathsheba concept. I hope you read some of that at least. And then you see the Nathan side of things. And if you don't know who Nathan was the guy whispering in King David's ear that, hey, David, you shouldn't have seduced Bathsheba and had her husband killed in a battle. He was the guy that was saying you can't do wrong things. And so we have these roles. And so whenever we as leaders fail, our subordinates will also fail. They'll lose respect, they won't follow orders, and they'll start doubting the efficacy of the mission. And what we're telling these young troops to do can take their lives. And so they have to trust us. They have to ethically and morally trust us. I mean, if you look at Colonel Contreras and most of your cadre there, they have a patch on their right shoulder. Some of your compadres there in the MS Force have a patch on their right shoulder. And they can tell you what the real world mission is and how important it is and how absolutely bedrock essential it is that there be ethical standards of conduct in the leadership of those real world missions. So this is one of the things that I really wanted to beat the drum and kind of stomp the stage about as we start looking at this thing we call ethics. It's my oath of office. I counted it up one time, counting my military oath, and then I transferred to the Guard and the Reserve, and I took the oaths again, and then I've been sworn in. Something as simple as a school board member. And then I was an assistant district attorney, and now as a state district judge, I've taken an oath several times, but this is the oath that really is the hallmark of what I want to be known as. You know, I'm not looking for the day that I have my tombstone out somewhere, but if somebody wanted to put something on my tombstone that meant something about who I am, if I could be seen by this oath right here. And I'm just going to read it to you. I know you can read it, and we're not supposed to read the slides. I know in our PowerPoint training, we don't read slides. But sometimes you just want to do that because it's so meaningful. And I want you to plug yourself into this thing as we go through it. It says, I, Albert M. McKeag Jr., do solemnly swear or affirm. Solemnly swear or affirm, that means that's coming out of the pit of my stomach. That's coming out of my heart. That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States. The Constitution of the United States. Not the president, not the Congress, not the political powers or whoever they are, not the NBA, the NFL, or any of the other organized teams of this country, but we support and defend the Constitution as the greatest living document ever created by man, the Constitution of the United States of America, against all enemies, foreign and domestic. You know, the foreign enemies are fairly easy to find. They're shooting at you. They're bombing somebody. They're killing somebody. They're taking down our government. But our domestic enemies are not as easily identified. But sometimes in this day and age, you're going to have to be able to recognize who the domestic enemies are, because your oath of office is going to tell you that you're going to support and defend the Constitution against the domestic enemies as well as those foreign enemies. That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same. That means there is nothing. Now, yes, I'm a Christian. My Christian faith is above the Constitution of the United States. Fortunately, the Constitution of the United States was written with the Christian concept in mind. And we're not going to get off into religion right now, but I can tell you, if you read history and you understand the basis of this country, you're going to find out that, yes, we were created as a Christian nation. But we bear true faith and allegiance to the same against all things other than our true faith. That I take this obligation freely, that we jump into this, not with just getting our toes wet, but we jump in over our heads. That we will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office, be that office as a second lieutenant, first lieutenant, captain, all the way up to whatever you might be as a 4-star general. That you're entering that office, so help you God. That is our oath. That is who we are. That is who we become. It's so much more than just a few words. It's like taking the Pledge of Allegiance and multiplying it by 10 or 100, because our oath of office becomes who we are. It encompasses everything that we talked about in those Army values and the ethos that we have and the culture that we have. Our oath is who we are. This is a think point. I really want to avoid politics. Politics in the military, yeah, they're important. Sure, you should vote, but I don't want to talk about politics. It's not essential. But there's been a lot of media hype about what are we going to do on this upcoming election? What happens if this? What happens if that? What happens if the vote is such? And so we as soldiers need to have a real good and firm understanding of where our loyalties are and what we're supposed to do and how we're supposed to do those things. And we need to question ourselves. And I'm not going to give you the answers to this. This is a Socrates slide right here. I'm going to ask the questions. You have to answer them internally for yourself. But what are our duties to our chain of command? And is our chain of command doing the right thing? Is the chain of command giving us lawful orders? Taking that a step further, what is our civilian leadership doing right now? Yes, the chief executive, the president, is our commander-in-chief, but what is the civilian leadership doing right now? What duties do we have to the civilian leadership? What are our duties to our nation? And then we really start talking about the internalizing of all of this. What are our duties to our personal honor? Whenever we talked about honor, when we were talking about the Army values, and we looked at that, and honor is part of that. And it was a real good definition given about our honor, because it's what we are and who we do. But I'd like y'all to just kind of think about those things, because you may be asked somewhere in your tour of duty, be it whatever component you're in, because of the cultural upheaval that we're seeing right now, there may be some orders that are going to be given to you that are going to be very complex. It's really not going to be simple like, Lieutenant McKay, I want you to take your tank company and you're going to go down Axis Carroll and you're going to seize the objective. And once you get to objective Carroll, I want you to redistribute your ammunition and secure that for passing of lines. That's a simple mission. Yeah, there's a lot of complex details in it, but whenever they say, Lieutenant McKay, I want you to go to Houston, Texas, and I want you to set a perimeter around the courthouse, the federal courthouse there, and I want you to protect that federal courthouse. Let me tell you, I'll take my tank company and I'll go face those 10-to-1 odds against the Soviet Army that I did in 1984, 1983, a whole lot faster than I'd go protect the federal courthouse in Houston, Texas, because that is a complex mission to go out and do those types of things that you may be called upon to do. Is the likelihood of the National Guard going to be higher than maybe the reserve or the active components doing that? Yeah, I'd say there are. So you guys and girls that are going into the Guard, you really need to know where you stand on these things right here, because this becomes part and parcel of what you're going to have to do and how you're going to have to do it. Like I said, I can't give you the answer. You've got to internalize that, and you've got to figure out those things on your own, because that is not an easy thing, I'll tell you. But while you're doing that, it's so vital that you know the difference between a matter of principle and a matter of opinion. I'm driving a Ford truck. Somebody says, I wouldn't be caught dead in a Ford. That Ford is fix or repair daily. I drive a Dodge. I drive a Chevrolet. I drive a GMC. Well, that's a matter of opinion. But a matter of principle are those bedrock things that you literally will live and die about. Those are the things, the bedrock of who you are. That goes back to our oath that we talked about. It goes back to the Army values. It goes back to taking care of the troops, being selfless in our service, and all of those other components that we talk about. You have to know the difference between a matter of principle and a matter of opinion. Because 10 years from now, your opinion may have changed. I may be driving a Dodge by then. Matter of fact, 10 years ago, I was driving a Dodge. But in 10 years, your principles probably won't have changed. You may have added other principles. You may have reinforced that principle, but that principle abides with you for the rest of your life. That becomes part of who you are. It was like I was saying about my oath. That's principle to me right there. Whenever I took that oath, the first time, it didn't have an end date. The second time, it didn't have an end date. The 17th time, it did not have an end date. So it's never had an end date to me. And as far as I'm concerned, at 70 years of age, that oath is still as important to me as it was whenever I was a second lieutenant and commissioned on May 13th of 1972. So that's kind of what we talk about whenever we talk about matters of principle and matters of opinion. That's kind of the fun finish of what we're doing right here. So I thought I'd turn it over to questions and comments. And if you got something you want to add, Colonel Contreras, before we turn it loose into questions and comments?
I do. Thanks. Appreciate it, Judge. Just want to kind of reemphasize what the judge said about temptations. There's going to be a lot of temptations for you as a second lieutenant. I, as well, am far from perfect. I will tell you that. Okay. But I have seen many careers ruined because Army officers did not do the right thing. Okay. And rightfully so. That's what should have happened. We talked a little bit about courage. I go back to when I was a second lieutenant in Iraq, and we had a soldier who was burned 33% of his body, primarily in the face, his arm. He lost an arm. So we're out there the next day. This happened, and it's hard. And a lot of times I tell you, hey, you almost have to be perfect. So I had an NCO come up to me and he said, hey, LT, how are you not scared? As we're getting ready to do the rehearsal, I was like, I'm probably the most scared person out here. But I have to convince myself. I have to have that courage. I basically convinced myself that I was going to die, so I could lead, because that's what our soldiers deserve from you. The other question I was going to have for you, Judge, is I vaguely remember the Army values having as much emphasis on them. Maybe in the 90s is when it started. Can you kind of talk to us a little bit about the evolution, kind of what you saw the 70s, 80s, and so forth?
Sure, I'd be glad to. Whenever I first put on a uniform in ROTC, it was 1969. It was the height of the Vietnam War. Tet Offensive had just been a few months before then. While the Army itself was not looked at in great favor, the Army had been at war, not unlike what you're seeing right now. It had been at war for a long time, really since about 1962. It had escalated, and the leadership had really started fracturing at that point. There was a lot of unrest in the leadership, And there was probably not as much drug use in the officer corps as there was in the enlisted corps, but it was there. It was prevalent. You think, man, a commissioned officer smoking dope or something like that? Yeah, they were doing that. There was a real confusion then in the early 70s whenever I went on active duty, and there was just a void in the leadership. We didn't talk about ethics. We didn't talk about morality. We talked about what was legal or illegal. And frankly, the legal standard means that's the very minimum standard. There was no real consideration about the morality of what you're doing. Yeah, we had the My Lai massacre, which was a lieutenant that massacred a bunch of civilians in Vietnam, and that was brought out, and we talked about it a little bit, but it was more in terms of what was legal as opposed to what was moral or ethical or the right thing to do, if you want to look at it in that. But in the 70s, we started really getting introspective and looking about, why do we do things the way we do? Why are we trying to set ourselves to a certain standard? And is the standard the legal standard, or should it be a higher standard than just what is the minimum legal standard? For instance, the legal standard in a lot of places is 70 miles an hour. Can we exceed that? Sure. But should we whenever you got a torrential rainstorm going on? Well, that's kind of what we're talking about, but on a much grander scale. So the 70s was the period of time whenever we were really, if you want to use the crude expression, we were gazing at our navel and trying to figure out, what's going on here and how are we going to set ourselves up? And a lot of the junior leaders from Vietnam had seen failures of senior leaders in Vietnam. In the 70s, those junior leaders were coming of age. And they knew that there was a better way. They knew whenever we started talking about things like duty, honor, and country, that there had to be a course of action that went along with that. And so the military started redesigning itself through the 70s. And then in the 80s, when Ronald Reagan came in, there was a great infusion of money, but there was also a great infusion of new soldiers and how we looked at things. And we started talking about the morality of what we're doing, the ethics of what we're doing, the honor of leadership. The books came out, the required reading books that we were talking about, that we started emphasizing ethics, morality, doing the right thing, and being in the right place at the right time with the right attitude. And so the 80s really was the foundational decade for building the new Army. And that Army of the 80s then fought Desert Storm, did a marvelous job. Just one of the incredible wars, if you want to look at it as a war. Yeah, it was 4 days long on the ground, but it was the preparation for it, but how it was done. And then the Army carried forward, the military carried forward into what we became. And then in 2001, and I think, some of you were so young whenever 2001, you don't even remember it. It's always been the war on terror as far as you are concerned. But the ethical foundation that was created in the 80s and 90s has carried us forward into the 2001 and beyond. Now, and I think Colonel Contreras would tell you, the op tempo, particularly from about 2003 till about 2015, was horrible. I mean, people were going so fast in and out of the sandbox in Afghanistan that the leadership was flipping over, that the pressure on performance, get the troops there, it didn't matter. And then looking at what was going on with the types of war that we were fighting, it was tough on the military leadership at that point. And those leaders that had survived that crucible in that period of time, Colonel Contreras is a great example of that. And the prior PMS that we had, they're great examples of that. They weathered those ethical storms and have come out the other side. And we're now in another situation of rebuilding our Army. And we're repurposing, I guess, if you want to look at it in a way, how we do things. We're looking at things with more questions, looking at why. And so from the time that I started way back then until now, the morality and ethical issues have taken a great prominence, Colonel. Is that kind of the answer you was looking for?
Yeah, thank you, Judge.
Do any of y'all have any questions? I know Massey probably has a question. He always has a question.
Sir, I have a question.
Sure.
What was one of your most complex challenges of ethics?
Military or civilian?
Let's go civilian.
All right. 5 years ago, I tried a case in Bastrop County. It was a murder case. It was a white police officer was accused, or actually with more than accused, he was charged with murder of an unarmed black woman. And it was was publicized. We tried the case one time to a hung jury. We had a jury, and it was about a 2-week murder trial. And because of a hung jury, they could not decide guilt or innocence on it. They deliberated over about a 24 jury hours over a 4-day period, and they were hung up. So we had to try the case again. And so 4 months later, we teed this case up to try again. And both sides, the prosecution and the defense, came to me and said, Judge, we don't want to do it with the jury. We want to come to you as the judge. We're not going to have a jury decide guilt or innocence. It's going to be you. And every day for 2 weeks, I had news media from the Washington Post, New York Times, every television station in Central Texas, that being San Antonio and Austin, was on the national media about 3 times a week, sitting there watching everything that I did. And at the end of that case, I was convinced, due to the evidence, and I can't really go into 2-week trials, but I was convinced by the evidence that there was no way that that police officer intentionally and knowingly killed that woman with the requisite intent. And so I found that officer not guilty. And yeah, you can imagine it really wasn't well received in some parts of this country. And I knew by the finding that I had to make that, okay, I could have sacrificed that police officer for what some would have said would be the greater good, and we would have avoided some riots and some persecution and some death threats on me and my family and things like that. But the right thing to do at that point was to find that officer not guilty. And so probably that was the greatest ethical challenge that I've faced in my judicial and civilian career. I don't regret it. It was the right decision then. It's the right decision now. It's still on the internet. You can read all about it. If you want to look up Albert M. McKay Jr., you'll find Google's probably got 10 pages on me out there. Ethical. I need to only have a few minutes left. My alarm is telling me I got to get you. Ethical decision. I was faced with a situation where some of my troops had stolen some property from one of our sister companies. And I knew who it was. And I really didn't want to turn those troops in because one of them was a buck sergeant that was promotable to staff sergeant, and he was going to become a tank commander in my unit. But I had to turn him in. And I didn't want to do that because I really liked the guy. He was a good soldier, and it was his family that was involved. And of course, you can't turn your back on the right thing to do on those kinds of things either.
I'll step in too, Judge. So I'll be broad, but I'll give you one of the decisions that I had to make. Again, second lieutenant, Iraq, war is hell, bullets are flying, and rules of engagement were a lot more loose in the initial startup of in Iraq. And we did something that we probably shouldn't have done. We, as in my platoon. So we get back, and believe it or not, I have NCOs telling me not to report something. And again, I love these guys. I'm gonna have a reunion with us here in a couple of months. Hopefully, COVID gets better. And they said, "Hey, LT, don't do it." But we have to be perfect. And I went and I talked to my battery commander. I was like, "Hey, sir, this is what happened," and he said, "Okay, thanks." So brought it up to the battalion commander and so forth. It turned out everything was okay. You know, we're following the rules of engagement, but you know, I could have easily not said anything.
Yeah, and those kinds of things, whenever you look back in the fog of distance, you think, well, that's, yeah, okay, maybe that was an okay decision. But whenever you're sitting there talking to the troops that you really like, and I don't mean like in the friendship way, but they're part of who you are. They're your team. You're carrying them. You know about their families, their kids, their wives or husbands, and you have to make those kinds of decisions. That's not an easy decision. But whenever you're consistent in what Colonel Contreras said there about being perfect, that perfection, sure, it is an ideal, but perfection in your ethical conduct is very, very important. You never let it lapse. You never take it off. It's always there. Day in, day out, in uniform, out of uniform, it's always there. Well, sir, I know you've got these good folks that need to go to drill. One last question, any good in Stone? I'm gonna pick on you. If y'all don't know it, and by the way, Stone is my cousin. I even claim it. I know she's your battalion commander now. I've watched her since she was a freshman. She's a good one. Her brother, I'm not her brother, her father and I were serving at the same time, and I'll give you just a short story. I was on the 3 Corps staff in the G3, and he was out at the 3rd ACR at Fort Bliss at the time on the S3, and we got to talk on the phone all the time. That was before Stone was even born. You have anything, Stone, for us?
No, sir, I don't have any questions, but I'm glad that you got to come talk to our class and give us this class, because it's really important. And with everything that's going on right now with our country and the election, it's very touchy subject. So I hope this gave our class a good idea of how we should be leading the program and practicing our ethics.
Appreciate that. Colonel, I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. This is a great group. I'm looking forward to the day when you're all putting on those gold bars.
Let me share one more story with you, Judge, about an incident that we had last year here
Sure.
at ROTC. So we went up to Ranger Challenge up in Fort Hood, you know, and what happens there is all the universities are kind of doing the name change tape, you know, so other people can participate. So we go up to Oscar Terradas. You heard it from me, Sergeant Moats, Second Lieutenant King now, and we said, hey, do we want to do this? You know, we have Cadet Dang, I think it was, like, you know, they're hard, you know, people getting tired, and do we want Camille to put her in? And Oscar Terradas looks at us and he's like, no, that's against Army values.
Love it.
That, you know.
Love it. That's cool stuff. All right. My salute to all of you. I appreciate what you're doing. I'm jealous. You know, if I could, I'd go back and I'd do it all again. So y'all do good, and I'll be seeing you up there on campus various times the rest of this year if we ever get back to anything that we'll call normal. Sir, with that, I'll leave the meeting.
Okay, appreciate it, sir.
Thank you.